Hello and welcome to Curated Spaces. I'm Molly Cooper and this is the London edition. In our first ever mini-season, we'll be featuring the best spaces to stay, work and play around the city, from timeless icons to under-the-radar finds. And as well as sitting down with the teams who brought them to life, I'll be bringing you the inside scoop from some pretty amazing people getting up to some pretty great things within travel, design and hospitality. I'm so excited to share all their stories with you, so let's get into it, shall we? Today we're talking all about a trend that is sweeping across Instagram and TikTok, the one and only quiet luxury. Now, while it might just feel like a revamped version of scandi chic, there's much more to this trend than meets the eye. And here to tell me all about it is Holly Beazley, Creative Director at the London Interior and Architecture studio, Elicyon. Holly, welcome to Curated Spaces. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me here today. Really excited.
Me too. Well, I'm very excited to be in your office, actually, which I think we'll get on to, but it is feeling very quiet luxury in here. Lots of beautiful tones, looking at those shelves behind you.
Very nice, yeah.
Very on brand. Now, before we go into the chat about quiet luxury, I'd actually like to start with you and your background and how you've ended up here at Elicyon.
Okay, wonderful. So I've been with Elicyon for around 5 years now. So I started off as an associate and I'm now a creative director. Throughout my career, I've always had a focus on residential, particularly high-end residential. And here, along with Charo, we lead the team. There's around 35 of us in the studio. So, yeah, it keeps us all busy.
A proper little gang of you. I love it. I actually walked in and you were all having Lebanese for lunch. And I think you called it a library with those beautiful, all the samples everywhere.
Yes, yeah, it's an amazing space.
Yeah, I think I like interior design studio vibes. I have discovered today.
Oh, good. Well, I'm pleased you're enjoying being here.
Well, let's get into it then, because I actually was off Instagram and TikTok for years and I got it again because of the podcast, really. And this quiet luxury thing was just everywhere. It was fashion, design, just quiet luxury kept popping up again and again, and I was kind of like, what is this? Where did this come from? So actually I'm really interested to hear about your take on it and what you understand this quiet luxury to be.
Yeah, so it's interesting with quiet luxury because it's something that I think touches upon many different aspects. So, it's a lifestyle. Could you even call it a philosophy, perhaps, if you're really going for it? So it touches upon fashion, it touches upon interiors, even the choice of, say, hotels or places that you like to hang out, potentially even health and fitness. So it spans so many different genres. But in particular, obviously, we're here to talk about interiors. So let's sort of dive a little more into that. So I think you could define it as a new age minimalism. So it definitely has a focus on investing in quality and authenticity over quantity. So it's not about, the big flashiness or, over excess. It's really sort of, in a way, a little bit of a rebellion against that. So, if we were to look at interiors and sort of, if we treat this a little bit like an onion, if we were to look at the exterior surface and think about what does it actually look like, you could say generally there's a very muted palette, so it's very tonal, it's very relaxing, it's serene, it's refined, elegant. So lots of beautiful creams, everything's quite soft, nothing's stark. You may go down, if there is a little bit of colour, then it's probably a rich earthy tone or a desaturated green, something which feels good for the soul. No neons.
No neons allowed in quiet luxury.
No, absolutely not.
I love that. And I think that in itself is so interesting because obviously TikTok and Instagram, they really flogged this boom, labels, Kardashians, flashy, everywhere, overwhelming to a point. And that was kind of the thing to be. And actually this is a whole pushback, rebellion against that. And it's not about the labels, it's not about having the newest handbag and the biggest car, it's about having really good quality and calming and beautiful things that will last longer than you might have last season's, shoes, handbag, dress, interior stuff for.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's quite tiring in a sense, isn't it? Trying to be 100% perfect all the time.
Yeah, oh my God.
And that is the message that's pushed at people. As you say, you've got to have this brand, or you've got to look like this. And I think that's one of the reasons why craft is actually a really big part of quiet luxury, because it actually celebrates that imperfection. And I think that's something that people feel comfortable with. It has a softness to it, something that feels comfortable to live with. And in that, if you were sort of going back to the philosophy aspect of quiet luxury, that celebrates the time that someone puts into something. That's seen as a valuable. That in itself is seen as valuable, the amount of time that someone would spend creating something, which is really lovely.
I really like that. Because you're so right that for many people time is their most valuable thing they have, and we all don't have infinite amounts of it. So actually putting that at the core of this philosophy or this movement, I think that's such a special way of understanding how to approach things like design or just living.
Living and slowing down, appreciating the materials around you. The materiality is generally very textural, it's natural, it's raw. Instead of having a shiny silk, you would have a very raw silk with lots of slubs in it, so you could appreciate the authenticity of that material.
And a bit like linen also seems to be having such a moment. It just seems to be everywhere. Like you walk into Zara Home and it is literally just linen.
Yes.
And again, it's this beautiful, like crumpled, they haven't actually steamed everything. It's like this is a beautiful natural woven material. And a bit like you say, celebrating that in all of its imperfections.
Yeah, exactly, because in the imperfection there is a uniqueness, and that is not repeatable. So in actual fact, and if you were thinking about luxury in its typical format, then people want something that's unique, and that rawness of materiality can give that.
So interesting. Okay, and you were saying this whole like onion concept, and like on the surface level you have these muted colours, these pieces that you've chosen with love and have taken real time to produce and have a real sense of craft. If we peel away that top layer, what we might find at the next sort of stage of the onion?
Well, I think actually it's a little bit about what we've touched upon. It's the why. It's the why does that mean that this is quiet luxury? So touching upon the aspect of craft and time, and the materiality, seeing the imperfections. I think it's that at the core of it. Really, it's about why, about those elements, and then it's the aesthetic almost secondary to that. It's how people want to live their lifestyles.
And I think that actually really resonates on a sort of, like you say, lifestyle basis. Having purpose, doing things that are special to you, mean a lot to you. I think there is this sort of shift. Maybe it was COVID made people reassess their lives and what they were doing, but I think people are placing a lot more importance on finding what really drives them in life and their purpose, and it feels like that sort of trickles down into maybe how we're approaching what we buy for our homes and this quiet luxury, finding something that feels comfortable and right to you almost.
Yes, exactly. And there's a sense of individualism within that, although it is a collective movement. And I think, again, within that, you can find your own sort of personality. And there are different, it could be seen as an umbrella term almost. You've got wabi sabi, the Japanese philosophy. Again, that celebrates imperfection. Or you've got Japandi, so a combination of Japanese, and Scandinavian design, and again that has a similarity. So there's lots of avenues within this that you could go down. There's a little bit of something in there for everyone. I think.
I love that. But at the heart of it is this like stripped back, clean, simple, celebrating the little things in life, the everyday joys, and I think that's really lovely. You kind of just mentioned wabi sabi, but are there any sort of icons or key figures or great spaces for inspo within this whole quiet luxury sphere that maybe you look towards or you've pulled inspiration from in the past?
Well, I mean, I think as a nation, I think Japan has a lot to offer on this. Yeah, it's interesting. I was actually there earlier in the year.
Wow.
And Japanese design for me um, it became so much more meaningful. I felt like I really understood it when I got to understand more about the culture of being in the country.
Yeah.
And again, I think that leads into the philosophy. I was really lucky to go to this beautiful temple and experience this meditation and tea morning, which I just absolutely loved. It was my favorite day there. And the stillness and the quietness of the temple was so soothing and powerful, and it didn't need a lot of materiality. You know, it's very pared back, and there's a serenity within that. And I also enjoyed learning about the rock garden as well, and how it's about the spaces in between. It's actually not about the things themselves, so like the rocks. It's not about that. And I think there's a lot to learn in quiet luxury from that as well. You know, the quiet luxury, there is often a lot of space. Space in itself is luxury.
Yeah.
If you can, you know, everyone wants to live in a big house, right? So there's lots of aspects I think that we can learn from that. And it did, in this temple specifically, it did have you know, a rather decorative room, but it wasn't shouty. It was this beautiful gilded space with lovely hand painted murals that told a story, all sort of lit by candles.
I love that. Again, coming back to the storytelling, to the materials, to the time and the care that went into creating that.
Yeah,
celebrating
exactly.
that.
Yeah, and all the actions are very purposeful, you know, in the sense of making tea. There's it's a ceremonial thing. There's a specific way of doing it. And you're focusing your mind. It's a very mindful activity.
It really, just then you speak, it really reminded me of this whole thing around rituals and how we don't have many left actually.
No.
And a ritual can be something as small as making your morning coffee or, you know, and it really feels like that is feeding into this whole having purpose, celebrating doing things, moving with purpose. And I love that you can sort of think about quiet luxury as an extension of that. And it's not just painting beige walls in your house. I think that's so special.
Exactly, it doesn't have to be. Slowing down, I suppose, actually is a big part of it. And appreciating the world around you.
Yeah, definitely. And let's say someone's listening to this, maybe they've just moved house, maybe they've always been interested, never quite know how to get started with quiet luxury, or it seems a bit beige, a bit too perfect. How do you think people could start trying around or playing with this sort of concept, this aesthetic, this philosophy?
Yeah, so I think, one of the easiest ways probably is just to start thinking about your colour palette in your home, because one of the aspects of quiet luxury is to have this very harmonious palette, and it is quite neutral, but as you know, we mentioned earlier, you can bring in those earthy tones. So in the harmony of the palette, I think there's a luxury because it brings a confidence. So I would say try and start there. And then I think materiality is very important. So layer in lots of beautiful textures. We recently did a project and we designed a headboard, and it had this gouged oak.
Gorgeous.
Yes, it was like a really large piece of gouged oak. So it's a natural material, but with this sort of handmade craft quality to it. So I think anything that has that craft quality, I think immediately makes something feel a little more lived in and less perfect.
Definitely. And what about buying things? Should people be looking for secondhand stuff, or looking maybe not just your high street stores? Are there any good spots that you use maybe when you're shopping or looking for things for your home?
Yeah, well, I think vintagey things do have often a kind of, that handmade quality, because it can be harking back to a day where things were less perfect and not everything was machine made. So I think that is a good place to start. And maybe you look at antique textiles. I mean, that would be beautiful. Big heavy woven patterns. But I think just remembering that rawness and quality of material, really, whether it's new or old, Can you see an exposed joint, or is there something like that, which tells the story of how it was made?
I really love that. I love the idea of exposing a little something, or a bit like it is the yen gardens, isn't it, when they leave the messy corner, which they don't actually comb. And there's always that little bit of imperfection within imperfection, isn't there?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, I think that's amazing. Well, it's been so interesting to get into this, and there's so much more to it than meets the eye. We do, of course, have a little closing tradition of a quick fire round. If you're up for it.
Oh, yes.
Love it. Okay, then. Well, these are all interior-y, aesthetics-y themed. But number one, who is your ultimate interior idol?
Oh my gosh. There's been so many over the years, and I get stuck because there are so many incredible aesthetics and so many different ways that you can go with things. I love the work of Pierre Yonovich. It's really, if you're talking about quiet luxury, actually, I feel like he's very much high up on the on the quiet luxury side of things. So very sculptural, trueness to materiality, and just very considered, things that are very designed. Okay, and then where do you find most of your inspiration when you're designing? Oh gosh, I suppose I love looking back at historical buildings or historical furniture. I find there's so much joy in that, and it feels good for the soul as well. I grew up in a timber framed cottage with lots of antiques everywhere, and so for me that feels good for the soul. And I think there's a lot to learn from people throughout the ages. So like big historical houses and all their detailing, like it's very interesting to go to National Trust properties or the Wallace collection and go and see how previous of people have done it, and just to walk into the spaces and appreciate the scale. And I think once you can figure out how to design at scale and really large spaces, actually I think that's a big part of cracking the design journey. You can then, from once you've designed these really big spaces, it's actually much easier to design everything, because you really have to think about scale and proportion.
I can so imagine. Okay then, well, along that design journey, what's your favourite part or favourite stage? Oh gosh, I think it has to probably be the initial stages, the conceptualization, the piecing it all together. It's like you have a big mixing pot of ideas and you're chucking things in, and having a quick taste. Is that the right direction? Or no, I think it needs a little bit of this, or and just getting that balance right. And once you feel that balance is right, this little feeling of, oh yes, we've done it. So that bit is really exciting, and then obviously you need to live out that aesthetic that you're trying to create. Definitely. And then when you see it all come together at the end as well, that's a big flourish. And then what's one thing that everyone should invest in for their home? Interesting. One thing that everyone should invest in. I actually quite like the idea of a rug. I think a really good rug is amazing. It really grounds a space. It draws together a seating arrangement. It gives you a color palette to work with. Gives a sense of home. Coziness. You can get a new rug, antique rugs, so many different amazing things out there. I love that. Great answer. Maybe I'll put one on my Christmas list. And then 2024, looking ahead, what trends or what things are you most excited about? Interesting. Well, I think the sphere of quiet luxury is going to grow ever more. And I think it leads into sustainability as well, which is an ever growing concern, I suppose you could say, of the majority of people now. So anything that celebrates natural elements, rawness, like a sense of home, then I think that's just going to continue to grow, and having more respect for the world around us as well. Definitely celebrating it in all of its imperfection and perfection. I love that. Oh well, Holly, it's been such a pleasure chatting. Oh, well, thank you so much. Thank you. have it, everything you need to know about quiet luxury as told by the ever so lovely Holly Beazley. And I'm sure we'll continue to see this trend evolve and grow throughout 2024, and I for one have time for it. Thank you for tuning into this episode. I really hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you did, please make my day and leave a little review or hit that subscribe button. There are so many things I would love to do with Curated Spaces this year, and that just helps make all of it possible. You can also head to our website for loads more content and also some inspiration for your next trip away. So go get planning your next vacation, and I'll see you next time for more of the London edition.